JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has its roots located in the horror genre, given that Part 1, Phantom Blood, is straight up a horror shonen, and the OVAs for Part 3 were designed to be specifically more horror than adventure.
It's an enemy stand!
You also have Hidehiko Araki wrote his own horror analysis novel, in which he shows how much of a horror fan he is. So it would make sense for Araki, a horror fan, to slowly develop upon his horror in his own story as he writes it more and more. He moves from ghosts and ghoulies to more iconic horror mascots into finally true psychological terror, which is shown to be one of his favorite things to write. And a really good recent example of this from one of the most recent parts of JoJo, that being JoJolion, is the stand Paper Moon King. Paper Moon King is the stand of the youngest member of the Higashikata household, this being the 9-year-old son of Joben Higashikata, Tsurugi Higashikata. And if we want to understand the meaning behind his stand, we should first learn the meaning behind Tsurugi and his name. So, Tsurugi's name, much like the rest of the children in the Higashikata household, has a hidden meaning behind it. This being the kanji for Tsurugi is translated as a sword, or the sword, in reference to the spade suit on a deck of cards, which, if we examine the meaning behind the spade suit more, we might find an interesting connection to the character. Tsurugi being 9 years old would be best represented by the 9 of swords, or the 9 of spades, which as a whole, in the sword suit, is the most dreaded card in the deck. It is referred to as the terror, or the nightmare. And this card represents being plagued with fear, guilt, doubt, or worry. And when the card is used to show a negative side of a person, or when it is reversed, it means total isolation from comfort and help, institutionalization, or imprisonment. And given how we met Tsurugi at the beginning of his arc, it fits quite well. You see, Tsurugi being the first son of his generation of the Higashikatas makes him the next victim of the rock disease. So, him being placed in the Higashikata household bunker was the best solution, given it is a place where they can give him medical treatment when the time comes. Which, that time is ever approaching given the fact that Tsurugi is 9 years old and the dreaded 10th birthday is right around the corner. Given that he is fully aware of his impending curse, Tsurugi, much like his card implies, would be plagued with fear and worries over his curse. And that he is isolated to this bunker meant to help him, over time, it begins to feel like a prison. Which makes sense that it leads him to doubt his family, and when he meets Yagayami, he is easily convinced to betray Josuke in exchange for a possible cure to the disease through the Rokakaka. Though, interestingly enough, when the card, the reverse 9, is placed with more positive cards, it begins to be a symbol of an idea of the nightmares coming to an end, which also fits with Tsurugi's character arc throughout the entirety of JoJolion, as the closer he gets to more positive people in his life, like Yasuo, Narusuke, or Josuke, the less his 9 of swords is representing suffering, and the more it represents hope. As he turns from this kinda creepy, traitorous kid who psychologically terrorizes people and manipulates them into liking him, into an ally who you can actually trust and uses his ability to help those he likes instead of hurt them. Speaking of Tsurugi's ability, let's talk about it. Paper Moon King, or as it was originally called in the original run of Jump Ultra, Paper Moon, is a bound stand which takes the form of origami sculptures, though the most common form is an origami frog. The stats are an E in destructive power, E in speed, C in range, C in durability, B in precision, and E in developmental potential. This stand has two major abilities, the first being Origami Animation. The ability allows Tsurugi to impart features onto objects such as origami paper and give them properties of whatever they're folded into. So for example, if Tsurugi used his stand on origami paper and then folded the origami paper into a frog, that origami frog would then have the abilities of a regular frog. It would be able to hop around and do other frog things. And until Tsurugi lifts this ability from the paper affected by Paper Moon King is able to be used by anyone. You see, this ability is based on Tsurugi's lonely childhood, as he creates an ability that allows him to physically create imaginary friends to help bide his time during his loneliness as he awaits his inevitable disease to take effect. The second and most effective ability of Paper Moon King is its contact-based visual manipulation. In basic terms, Tsurugi can remove the ability to differentiate between faces, objects, voices, and text. Though, Tsurugi always appears normal to those under his effect. This is because of the musical reference in which Paper Moon King gets its name from. Paper Moon King gets its name from possibly two different places, the first one being the song It's Only a Paper Moon, originally by Harold Arlen, and popularized by a cover done by Nat King Cole, which is where the King in Paper Moon King would come from, or the song Paper Moon by Natalie Cole, the daughter of Nat King Cole, which would also mean that Paper Moon King would get its name from Nat King Cole still. Now, the song It's Only a Paper Moon itself is about how the right company can turn an uncomfortable situation into a more pleasant and comfortable one. This is reflected in two ways, the first being a more positive interpretation of the lyrics in Tsurugi's development as a character in JoJolion, as the closer he gets to people like Yasuo and his grandfather, the more he learns to handle scary situations, as he finds the right company to make uncomfortable situations comfortable. The second way the song is implemented is a more twisted view on the lyrics, as some of the lyrics say that the world will no longer be fake or make-believe as long as the listener believes in the singer. This is reflected in Tsurugi making himself the only person who Yasuo can trust in any way, making her world a make-believe world where everyone and everything looks the same, and the only difference and the only one offering her any help is Tsurugi. Also, the ideas behind the song have been interpreted as how the power of love can distort reality, or create very boring situations into very romantic situations, as the literal idea of a paper moon and a cardboard sea would be kind of boring, but with the right company you can make the best out of anything. And it fits because before the power of Paper Moon King is noticed by Yasuo, she hears Tsurugi tell her that he loves her and that he cares about her, and these manipulative views on love fit Tsurugi given that Tsurugi is a child, and would view such things as love in a childish manner. And to them, manipulating someone into loving you back is how love works. Even Araki stated that the stand ability is based on a childish point of view. Put it simply, it was the idea I thought of from a childlike state of mind. Now, the only difference between the Nat King Cole and the Natalie Cole versions of the song is that Natalie Cole's version of the song belongs to an album called Unforgettable, which is connected more to the power of Paper Moon King, and also given the fact that Paper Moon King was called Paper Moon originally, this implies that Araki possibly based it more on Natalie Cole's version of the song than Nat King Cole's version of the song, but that's splitting hairs to a point that it doesn't really matter because it's a cover of an original, and they also share the same meaning. Now, what makes Paper Moon King terrifying is how simple of an idea it is concept-wise, and how it evolves more as the part goes on to become utterly terrifying. Though, the original ability by itself is horrifying enough as it is. You see, the horror that comes from Paper Moon King's ability is based on a real-life phenomenon, this being something referred to as face blindness, also known as prosopagnosia, or in the case of Paper Moon King, acquired prosopagnosia specifically.
Wait a minute. What?
What? You've never heard of prosopagnosia? Well, put simply, it means a condition where the mind can't distinguish between human faces. In other words, my face would look the same as Clover's or even yours. So they can't remember faces, which is how most people recognize each other. That means that people with prosopagnosia have trouble recognizing even people they're close to. Usually they can make do by associating people with other things. Their voices, their clothes, their hair.
Does that mean other people's faces look like blanks?
No, I don't think so. Well, you've seen monkeys, like in a zoo, right? To you and me, all the monkey faces look the same, even though they've obviously got faces. It's almost impossible for a human to distinguish between them. The zoo staff that works with them would learn to identify different monkeys eventually. But you or I couldn't, unless one had a scar or something else to set it apart. Well, that's how people would be to someone with prosopagnosia.
The real scary bit about acquired prosopagnosia is that it takes a person who was once able to identify faces or be able to recognize friends and family to a person who can't tell the difference between spouse or stranger. This leads a person to develop a possible serious isolation complex. Because of their inability to recognize someone by their face, they must choose to use other parts of the person to identify them as, such as their hair or their clothing. So when that person inevitably gets a haircut or changes their style, they suddenly become a stranger again, which negatively affects the person suffering from the illness. A lot of people, including the ones who were born with the illness, have reported a stressful new lifestyle, as they are always worried they might ignore someone on the streets or be confronted by someone who they would rather have ignored. Some have even decided to develop coping mechanisms for this, such as an over-friendly appearance to everyone they meet, just in case they've met them before. This has caused a lot of added stress to their life, given that if they slip up, it could lead to disastrous results later on. which in turn has led many people who have developed this illness to seek a more and more isolated life, as to minimize the possible disaster scenarios, which is exactly what happened and what Araki based his writing off of, as he says in his Jojo Veller interview. An ability where you can't recognize faces and feel yourself being chased in a loneliness appealed to me. And as we move further through JoJolion, Paper Moon King's ability only gets stronger and stronger, even being able to change an object as big as a bus to appear as just a regular person. Which also kind of plays into prosopagnosia slightly, as you see the people suffering from prosopagnosia will use the same part of their brain to recognize objects to then begin recognizing people, as their ability to recognize people is no longer functioning. This change in manipulation elevates the possibilities of Paper Moon King to incredibly terrifying levels, though the truly terrifying thing about Tsurugi as a character right now is again found in his naming scheme. As you see, he is the Nine of Spades, which is a card that means the martyr, or the card that brings new life through suffering. Meaning that Tsurugi's role in JoJolion is likely far from over. He is a ticking time bomb waiting to go off, and it could lead to a lot of hardships for both Josuke or his own family in the future. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to help make more videos like it, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MannyNotTheBadGuy, and if you want to be able to see right through Paper Moon King's ability, and if you want to cure your rock disease, you can head on over to Funimation.com/show/Shimonetta and purchase yourself a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist. And you'll be cured. It's like the Rokakaka, except for about dick jokes. So I guess it's more like the Rokak-kak-kak.